I thank God that I've gotten to the point where I can make over 6 figures per year flipping cars with under 20 hours per week, but it definitely was not always that way. When I first started, I had no money, very little mechanical experience, and really no one teaching me how to do this business, and that led to me almost giving up on multiple occasions from all the costly mistakes that I made. Which brings me to why I'm making this video. I'm going to give you the full step-by-step roadmap I wish I had, starting with $0 and working your way up to a $100,000 income within a year from today. Which brings me to step number 1, which is building your skills. Now, of course, if you have $0 and literally nothing in your bank account to start flipping cars with, that's something that we're gonna have to address. But there's really even a bigger issue because there's certain skills that's required in this business where even if you started to stack up your money right now and you got thousands of dollars to spend flipping cars, you could lose those thousands of dollars just as quickly if you don't have the right skill set you need to go about this business. So yes, I'm going to tell you to get a job. You might not like hearing it, but of course a job is going to be the most reliable way that you can get your money up as quickly as possible from the start if you're really starting with zero. But to go along with that is picking the right job. There's really 3 jobs that I would suggest the most to go into just when you're starting up. That would either be as a mechanic, as a salesperson, or just really any position working at a dealership. Of course, with a mechanic, the great thing about being a mechanic is you're just going to have a lot of car knowledge, which is going to be needed to really start you into getting some great deals to begin with. You don't need to be some master mechanic to really go far in this business, but just having that fundamental skill set to know exactly what's wrong with cars when you're diagnosing them and understanding what are the common problems of cars that you should be looking out for and certain cars that you really should be completely avoiding, that's going to take you a long way and not losing your money right from the start. The next one, as a salesperson, is just big because if you never really worked with sales before, selling the cars could be a tough thing in itself. It's not a huge issue because a lot of times when you're selling cash cars, the cars can kind of sell themselves, but you should be able to know how to negotiate, how to close a deal, how to get that person to act on a deal now rather than wait until later. And then there's also working at a dealership. And I'd say overall, this is probably the best course of action to take, especially if you really want to go the far route of potentially even opening up your own dealership in the future, just because you can see everything. You can see the process of how they're buying cars at scale. You can see how people are doing things like financing with cars. You can see how they're talking to their customers, how cars are being worked on in the shop, how cars are being detailed and prepared, all that stuff. You can see a lot of insider knowledge before you even get into doing it yourself as well. And I will say, if you don't pick any of those courses of action, or really especially if you jump into something like this and you don't have literally any type of mechanical experience, you know nothing about cars, but you just like how cars are and you like the car industry, I would highly suggest either A, potentially just trying to work on some type of cars with friends and family members, just so that they can kind of guide you to know about certain aspects of like simple parts of a car, just so that you're not fully nervous and dumbfounded when you're checking out cars later on that you're going to be actually buying to flip for profit. And then option B would be trying to do some type of internship at a mechanic shop or something like that. It really doesn't have to be a crazy amount, even if it's just like 5 hours a week or so. That little bit of time that you're doing, even if it's just a month or 2 months that you're doing this to shadow someone that's working at an auto shop, can make you go way further in just learning the practical knowledge that you need to really check out a car and diagnose it and different things like that. So now moving on to step number 2, which is to learn your market. The key thing, if you haven't really known before about really flipping anything, not even just cars, is that the profit is made off of the purchase, not the sale. So of course, to follow along with that, one of the most important parts of the whole process is making sure that you're buying the car at a really good deal. But the problem is, if you're just getting into the business, if you see a car comes up for sale, how would you know if it's an average deal or if it's a really good deal? You really wouldn't know. So what I would highly suggest doing while you're building your money up and you're building your skill set up, just go on Facebook Marketplace or OfferUp and just search what cars are like in your area, what cars are selling for, what are the cars that end up taking a really long time to sell, and what are the cars that end up being sold within a couple of days. And you can even take the year, make, and model of the cars and then what the selling price is, and then just kind of jot them down on a note paper. Usually when you write anything down, it's going to really stick it into your memory a lot better. And if you can get to the point where you could see one car comes up and you see what is the average price for that car, and then you see another car comes up that's literally thousands of dollars cheaper than that same price, then you know to jump on that as quickly as possible. And a lot of times that speed of you being able to just know if it's a really good deal or not is what's going to separate you from someone else that's potentially taking even minutes longer than you are to contact that same person to get that same deal. And then as the last thing, while you're doing all this, I just want you to save up until you have at least $1,000 to $2,000 to spend on your first car to flip. Along with that, I would also just suggest, if you don't have some type of tool set already going, you should just get at least an OBD scanner. We're going to talk about how how to use that exactly in a little bit. And then also just a simple ratchet set as well as a jack and jack stands. That's usually about enough to really kind of get you started with at least working on cars yourself. All right, so now step number 3 is flipping your first car. And now the exciting part of this step is this is where you finally get to start taking off. But what I really want you to focus in on here is I don't want you to get to the point where you're taking an extremely risky move, thinking that this one move is going to propel you all the way to the moon, when in reality you have a high chance of plummeting that rocket ship and never wanting to start off again. Which is the reason why I highly suggest starting with private sale for your first flip rather than auctions. Yes, we're going to get to auctions in a little bit. That is going to be the key to being able to scale up your income over time. But at least for your first flip, I want it to be a short thing where you're going to be making money off of that car rather than potentially buying a lemon, which is much more likely when you're going to certain auctions, especially at this stage where you might not even have a crazy amount of mechanical experience or money to really start things up. And one of the main places nowadays to find good deals through private sale is primarily Facebook Marketplace. You could also use OfferUp, but Facebook is really the main thing people post cars on. And I'm going to go through a very quick tutorial of how to buy a good deal through Facebook and how to flip a car. This is going to be the main steps of it. First, you're going to be setting a filter so that you can have the newest listings showing up first, because in most times it's going to be those new listings that are just freshly posted that are going to be the ones that's also going to go the quickest and the ones that's going to be the best deals. So you have to make sure that you're refreshing that feed a good amount throughout the day, just in case you don't end up missing anything. And at this point, if you've been doing your homework to study the market around you, you should be able to see when a good deal comes up that's not just the norm, that's an average deal that's kind of posted for average prices. So let's say you find that good deal that ends up popping up. What you're first going to do is just check to see what other cars are that's actually posted around that area as well, and see how good of a deal that one is and how much the average price of other cars are selling for. So let's say if you see other cars are selling around $3,000 and that one's marked for $2,000, well, you know it's already looking like a much better deal than most are. So then you're going to take that average price that other cars are selling for, and you're going to do a very quick little math formula with it. You'll be taking that average selling price number minus the amount that you want in profit. Let's say it's $1,000, and then you're also going to subtract whatever expenses you're going to have to do to get that car in good condition. Once you subtract all that from that average selling price, that's what's going to be the amount that you're going to be buying the car for. At this same point, you should also be contacting the seller to try to meet up as soon as possible, because again, he might be getting contacted or she might be getting contacted by a lot of different people. And make sure you're also asking for the VIN number before you come as well. I'm going to put a quick link on a video that I made showing how you could check the VIN number for free, so be able to see things like if it's a clean title or not and different things like that. And yes, I would suggest you primarily trying to get a clean title car rather than a rebuilt or salvage title car for your first flip. Make sure when you're taking the time to check it out, not only are you going to be reading the engine codes with that OBD scanner that you got earlier, but you're also going to be checking the I am readiness status monitors to see if there's any codes that were cleared. And I'm also going to link to a video at the top on how to inspect a used car as well. Then if everything checks out, where there's nothing like really popping out that's really a bad issue, like a transmission issue or a serious engine issue that you wouldn't feel comfortable with fixing yourself, then you can make an offer for the car, and make sure that offer is going to be for that price that you already put in for that calculation as the number to purchase the car for, or if anything even a little bit lower than that, just in case anything else pops up you're not going to be expecting. Now when you get the car, of course you're going to be registering the car first, and one of the first things you're going to be doing to get that car ready for sale is taking care of the mechanical issues first, and then make sure you are not going to be trying to sell that car until you clean it up. People are not going to buy some crusty looking car. You have to make sure that the car looks clean and smells clean as well. Then you're going to take pictures of it and post it up on Facebook Marketplace for that same selling price that you saw other people posting their cars for before. Now getting on to step number 4, which is reinvesting. The key thing with this step in itself is this is going to be the make or break thing, where you can either making it to having that 6-figure income in under a year, or it taking potentially 5 years or more to get that same result. When you get the profit off of that car, I know it is going to be tempting to either use it to pay bills or catch up with other stuff, or use it to go buy yourself some nice watch or something like that. Do not do that. Use all of that money only to reinvest back into the business to buy more cars, either a more expensive car or potentially 2 cars instead of 1. If you're doing that correctly and you're constantly reinvesting back into the business, you're going to see you're climbing up your savings very quickly. Like that $2,000 that you had before is going to quickly become $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 in no time. Now, at least if you're living in the US, at some point you're going to hit that lovely restriction that the US puts on you, where you can only flip a certain certain amount of cars within 1 year. So what you could do when you get to that cap to get a little bit further and save up a little bit more income is put the cars in someone else's name to be able to just get that cap restarted again with someone else. And if there was a number I would say to strive to get to, I would say around $10,000 is a good number to really try to jump up to and save. Now moving on to step number 5, which is becoming a dealer. Now if you've been following these steps so far, you made it up to that 10K, there's really going to be a couple of things that will be holding you back from being able to scale up a lot further and in a quick way as well. First one will be, well, realistically finding those good deals for the cars. You might see, especially if you're trying to flip multiple cars at a time, it will be hard trying to go check out a bunch of different cars all over the place, especially when a lot of the people that are selling these cars are probably lying or hiding something about the car, which ends up just being a complete waste of time. And then along with that, having to register every single car that you're trying to flip. So the option that I would really suggest you to take next is becoming a dealer representative. Now you might have heard of this before, maybe you might not have, but in essence it's basically becoming a representative under another person's dealership. This is what a lot of people could do if maybe you have a friend that's a dealer, or maybe you have a family member or something like that that has their own dealership. They can actually welcome you under the dealership to buy cars just as they would be able to as well. And in most situations, if you have that family member or friend, I would usually suggest just using that as a resource to do that same thing yourself. But for most people, you might not have that connection. So the next option would be going around your area to dealers that surround you and just suggesting to them and asking them if they'd be okay with signing you up under the dealership if you gave them some type of fee or some type of commission with each car that you're going to be buying under them. The next thing would also be searching up online, either on Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, on OfferUp, and just searching up dealer representative or dealer auction access. And you'll see programs like that where that's the main thing that they do. They have their own dealership and they allow people to come under the dealership to buy cars under them. However, I would say be very cautious. Of course, there are people that have gotten scammed signing up for these same types of things where people don't even really have their own dealerships, but they're taking money to try to give them access to stuff they really don't even have. Make sure that not only A, they actually have their own lot, but B, they've also have credibility where they've been doing this for a good while, not just where they started things up within the last year. That is actually what I do as well myself. I am a representative under a dealership. I also help people to get under the same dealership that I'm in. And the one that I've been in, he's been running things for at least 5 or 6 years now. I've been with him for around 4 years and things have been great, and I've helped over 100 people sign up, so I know things have been going great so far as well. As of right now, there are still spots available when I'm making this video, so if you want to join as well, you click into the link in the description below and you can get access yourself. But I will say I'm not sure exactly how long spots are going to be available in the future. Now after you get this dealer auction access, or basically access to be able to go to these dealer only auctions, this is also around the time that I would suggest you starting to build up some type of team as well. It doesn't have to be a huge team with a bunch of different employees or anything like that, but if anything, if you could at least just have something that's like a mobile mechanic to be able to work on cars with you, and a mobile detailer or a mobile bodywork, people like that can help get your cars ready for sale faster so that you're not doing everything yourself. If you're just someone that's just trying to do a couple of flips per year and you're trying to get the most profit out of every flip, that's not a bad thing. But if you're actually trying to scale up your income to be 6 figures or beyond that, there's really no way that you're going to be able to do every single thing yourself and still have some type of life to be able to spend if you have family members or friends or something like that that you also want to spend time with. And then for most times when you have this dealer auction access, you're going to have a lot more auctions to choose from, and these dealer auctions are generally going to be a good amount better than things like public auctions where you really can only check out a car but so much. So the risk should be a lot lower and you should have a lot more to choose from as well. And when you go to these auctions, you're going to be following around the same process that you follow when you're buying cars from private sales to make sure that you're buying cars for the right price. But just make sure that you're going to these auctions in person. I know it can be tempting to just look at the auctions online and just bid on everything online and just hope things will go well, but trust me, that's how you really can get burned. Most auctions, unless they're strictly an online dealer auction, they really won't tell you nearly enough about a car that you should be trying to know before you buy it to make profit off it later. And the goal is going to be where you can flip around 3 to 5 cars at a time. And of course, that's where your team that you already built up with mechanics and detailers and different things like that will be able to still help you stay on track without working a crazy amount per week. Now we're going on to step number 6, which is just going all in. This is the part where you're going to start to make that transition. So at some point, if you're doing things right, you should get to the point where that side hustle that you're doing with this business is doing as much as your full-time job is doing. And let's say instead of having to do 40 hours per week, you might only be doing 10 hours per week or 15 hours per week with the car business. So imagine what your income would be like if you took away that time that you were putting into your full-time job and you started committing that towards your car business instead. So when you get to that point where your car business is matching what your full-time job is making for, I'd say, at least 3 months, and you also have some type of emergency fund as just a rainy day fund and things don't go well for a couple of months, then I would say you're in a good position to potentially quit your job. Now moving on to the last step, which is starting your own dealership. And on this point, I will say this is going to really go into two different directions. Really, for a lot of people, the things that I was covered before this, where you're already flipping 5 cars or more at the same time, you could really get to the point where you're making well over 6 figures per year just with that alone. But if you're someone that wants to go above that and you want to have a bigger cap of how much you can really do, that's where this is going to come into play, of starting your own dealership instead. So first of all, you are going to want to check to see the exact requirements with your state, because what's happening in my state and things that I have to do might be a little bit different than what's happening in your state. But I'm just going to cover the general things that most states would require for opening up your own dealership. Now, the first thing, just to get things started, is to get a bond for your dealership. And you're going to have a certain requirement for how much of a bond you need for the size of your dealership. But the big thing is that you're going to have to pay a percentage of how much that bond is. And the percentage is going to be based on what your credit is. So I would highly suggest, if you want to go that full route in the future of opening up your own dealership, try to get your credit in check now so that you don't have to pay as much towards that bond in itself. The next thing is going to be insurance to cover the cars on your dealership. This is really going to vary, especially per state. Sometimes it could be $5,000 a month you might have to pay in insurance. Other states, it might be only $1,000 a month or so you might have to pay in insurance. The next main thing is going to be a lot for your dealership with an office as well. And that office is usually going to need at least to have AC. Now, of course, there's also going to be a lot of different paperwork that you're also going to need just to get everything started. And I will just say, keep in mind the timeline on, let's say, the point that you actually start all of this to the point where your dealership is up and running could vary greatly. It could be anywhere from 3 months potentially. So some states could be like a year of you waiting for the whole thing to go through. But when that whole process is done, then you're good to go. That process that you had going beforehand, flipping multiple cars at a time, is just going to be able to go at a bigger scale. And the best thing, if you really stacked up a good amount of money before getting into starting your own dealership, is all these cars that you're buying is going to be with your money. You're not going to need some type of floor plans or financing to get those cars to keep the dealership going, which is going to drastically reduce the risk of your dealership ever failing in the future. But besides that, if you want to get that dealer auction access yourself, as I mentioned, just go to the link in the description below while the spots are still available, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.